If you're not measuring your culture, you're not managing your business. Donald Thompson has built, led, and invested in over 30 companies, and his leadership playbook isn't just about profits, it's about people, metrics, and momentum. A lot of people talk about culture. Donald Thompson measures it. And when you see what he's built, you'll understand why that changes everything. Hey guys, welcome back. It's George, and you're about to hear from what I would consider to be one of the most brilliant operational minds I've ever had on the show. Donald isn't just a CEO. He thinks in systems, he's a leadership strategist, and he's an incredible mentor to founders scaling real companies with real stakes. And this conversation is a masterclass in leadership, clarity, culture. Plus, he became my new friend and I love him to pieces. And if this is your first time here, welcome to the Mind of George show. This is where we cut through the noise and get real about what it takes to build something meaningful. No fluff. It's just frameworks, mindset, and values that actually scale your business. And you, I believe you belong here if you ended up on this podcast. And in this episode, Donald breaks down what most entrepreneurs miss when they're trying to scale, especially around culture, communication, and most importantly, consistency. He shares and we talk about all the tactical ways to lead teams, how to build buy-in, how to measure what actually matters, and why trust is the true currency of results. And he deserves the platform and the flowers that I give him because he's the CEO of a company called the Diversity Movement. He's an executive coach, an angel investor, and truthfully, a serial entrepreneur who's built and executed multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses. He's led teams, I think, if I remember, of upwards of over 600 people. He speaks globally all over the world on leadership, inclusive culture, and he loves mentoring founders across all different industries who are building with purpose and precision. And I got to be real about this. Most companies, we see it, we've experienced, they say that they care about people, but they don't have any systems to back it up, and people don't feel that way, and it affects the business and it affects the customers. And Donald shows you how to lead with empathy and excellence. And he also lays out the blueprint to be able to do exactly both. And so we get deep into the weeds of how to build a data-driven culture without killing creativity, why this empathy and leadership is really a giant business strategy and not a checkbox. And then basically his 3 core metrics that he uses to assess every team he advises, which is your checklist to make sure that you have them, you're using them, or you focus on them. And so I feel like if you've ever watched The Matrix, where they plug into Neo and he downloads instantly, this episode is like getting a $1 million leadership download. So without further ado, let's jump in with the powerhouse that is my new friend, Donald Thompson.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show, and I'm gonna get right into it because today I'm gonna crown him. I'm gonna give him his flowers early. I'm gonna say we have the king of empathy and economics, and I'm gonna let him unpack that. But even in our pre-talk before we hit record, I was like, oh, we should have recorded this whole thing because this is a massive, massive conversation. And this gentleman is the founder of the Diversity Movement. He is a leader who helps people understand how to be an effective leader, how to understand that collaboration requires healthy tension. He helps people navigate, which let's call it 2025, diverse work environments, which is every single day. We got remote people, we got in-person people, we got parents, we got single parents, we got married, we got people like me that are walking liabilities that people are trying to work with. And all of us need to know how to be in better relationships, truthfully, so that as him and I were talking about, that you understand that the success that you have comes down to the relationships you have with your team. And those teams could be independent contractors. They could be a team of one, and maybe even the relationship you have with yourself and how you treat yourself and create an environment for yourself. And so I'm really excited to welcome my bald brother, from another state that I used to live with. So Donald, welcome to the show.
Hey, listen, thank you very much for having me. And like you said, the pre-talk was amazing. The energy is right. And I can't wait to unpack this topic. And so I'm going to dial into it. When you think about business and winning in the workplace, right, which is really what I try to help leaders do, we often move into the context of the typical hard number deliverables, right? When in reality, the thing that make us most effective, most innovative, most different and unique is how we drive performance through people, right? And that's ultimately the skill set that we're trying to attain and grow. And as I was unpacking my leadership style and the DNA that I wanted to show up as a leader, right, I started to think about the pillars that could really define who I am, what I do, and why I win, right? And that is balancing, right, empathy and economics, right, in this high octane world. And so if we think about empathy, and I'll use a quick story because I like to be real pragmatic. I like to be real open with folks I'm sharing with. Number one, we're all living life for the first time. I'm a work in progress, just like you are. I just have had a little bit different journey that I can share some things. And so when I think about empathy, right, it's about how you deliver it in a pragmatic and practical way to the people that you interact with. I was talking with a business leader on my team, and we just were catching up on kids. And her name is Melanie Sanders, and she was giving me an update on one of her kids that was progressing really well now, right? Had some little ups and downs, but now is just like doing amazing. And she said, Don, as parents, we are only as happy as our unhappiest kid. And when I unpacked that and I thought about that, right, like it just hit me right in my heart space, right? I have 4 kids, and I thought about that in my life and my relationships at home and family. Then I started to really unpack that in the way that we work. How can you expect people to perform at their highest level when they have all this noise and distraction and elements in their life that are going on that they can't effectively share with you as a reason why they're not running on all cylinders? So there's both a communication block and there's actually an execution block. And so building that empathy and economics, and now I'll go into the pragmatic component. I was working with one of my very senior consultants, and they're getting ready to do a training with one of our top clients, right? And this is one of our, in any business, if you've got 100 clients, you've got 10 to 20 like that make the business, right?
Yep.
Like that build the business. And so this is one of our top 20 clients. And she said, Don, can you walk through my presentation with me? And we've done this kind of training again and again. And so I thought in my mind, I was like, okay, there's a little more anxiety here than is typical, but here's empathy in action. I put that aside. I answered the request. We walked through about 75, 80 slides. It's a couple day exercise. And that team member is now ready to go tackle the world. It wasn't up to me to know why there was a little drop in courage. It wasn't up to me to know why there was a little bit of anxiety. It was up to me as a leader to show up in that moment of need, to put off the CEO title, the founder title, and get gritty with my team member and get them ready to go win. Right. And so a lot of times what we have to do as business leaders is we have to remember a couple things. Number one, our title and our success typically scares people from asking from us what we need. So we have to pull and we have to be available. Number two, when that request comes, we have to be willing and able to change our prioritization to show up for our team, even knowing that that hour means I'll have to work another hour or two later, but I don't have to go do this training. I don't have to go do this seminar. So that trade-off in priority to show up in a supportive way, super, super powerful. I wish I could say I always knew this. I wish I could say I was always an expert in this. I'm the son of a football coach. I'm a former college athlete. And as we were talking about before the show, empathy and high-level Division I athletics don't typically go together, right? Like they don't typically align. And so I had a business coach, international business coach. I knew I needed some help. I'd sold a couple companies, but I just wasn't everywhere I thought I could be. I at least recognized that there was another level I could go to. And his name was John Murphy, who I was working with at the time. And shout out to John, based in France, and amazing. But he said, Don, you have been pretty successful, but you're leaving opportunity on the table because the turnover in your businesses is too high. And the reason the turnover in your businesses are high is you're burning out your high performers and you're not investing enough in training, teaching, and mentoring your B performers that could be top performers. You're so focused on the next 90, 120 days that you're not building a team that's built to last. And that's a business decision that you can make. You can throw me out of your office. You can stop paying me. But after talking to your team members, after talking to your board, after talking to you, you don't need 2 years of training from me. You need 2 months of intense understanding that a people first mindset is going to show up powerfully in your P&L. And 10 years ago, this happened. And when that clicked, I've been now on a journey to balance empathy and economics, because you have to have both, right? You can't be this empathetic leader that doesn't meet payroll.
Yep.
You can't be this empathetic leader that is not profitable. You have to balance empathy and economics. But anyway, I ramble a little bit, but you hit a topic.
I love the ramble, because we got an hour and we got a lot to unpack. And I also love hearing, your perspective, right? Because you and I share the same thing. Like, you, D1 athlete, I was a Marine. I thought I was a good leader. In context, I was, because we were talking about performance and life or death issues, right? But when you take that skill set and you try to create it in the workplace, it doesn't create that place to have culture, to have buy-in, to have people feel safe. And you even alluded to this earlier, where you'll have a high turnover, or you have people quietly quitting, or maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I feel like I have to bring all the ideas to the table. Well, that typically are warning signs and flags that people don't feel safe, or maybe a mistake was made, but you didn't know about it. That's because the culture dictates that we don't learn from mistakes. Instead, it's unsafe to share them, so they cover it up. And the craziest thing about it is, I'd say 9 out of 10 of that is the soft skill of empathy. It's creating that culture and environment. And I think what's so prevalent, and I'm bringing this to people's awareness more than I am even asking you a question, I think we all know as entrepreneurs, we're surrounded by the hard skills. We're sold the hard skills every day, because they're like, oh, look, there's an ROI. Put $1 in, you get 2 out. You can learn this. You can learn sales. You can learn marketing. You can learn ABC. And I think people, myself included, for a long time, fail to understand the importance and the long-term and short-term ROI of the soft skills. And I'm curious in your perspective, and I'll share a little story anecdotally here, but I want to unpack this empathy as a skill, because I think it's trainable. And the reason I share this for everybody listening, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but if you've listened to the podcast long enough, I went through bouts of depression and suicide and addiction and, all this trauma that I went through. And I remember I sat down with a therapist, like the 25th one. And I was like, I just can't feel like I was born this way. And I used to share and say, I was born this way. And, truthfully, none of us are born lacking empathy or love. It's conditioned and over this, but I'll never forget this woman, because she looked me dead in the eye and she's like, well, how do you feel? And I'm like, I can't feel, I'm numb. And then she responded, and it broke my brain, Donald. She said, numb is a feeling. And it collapsed this entire paradigm that I have. But I would show up in relationships, or even early on, 10 years ago as an entrepreneur, I thought leadership was tell you what to do. We hit the timeline no matter what. Even though I was taught in the Marine Corps, we're only as strong as our weakest Marine. The only way that I knew how to engage was with force. And then I spent this lifelong journey now, over a decade and a half, of learning empathy. And now I look at myself and I'm like, empathy is a skill, but we're not taught how to train it. We're not taught how to use it.
That is powerful. And I want to just think about the phrase that you said that I'm ruminating on. Empathy is a skill, and now apply it to my scenario in my life, right? I started to get focused on listening to my team. I started getting focused on more listening to my clients better, not just what I wanted to sell them. I started to, in my second marriage, I'm now 6 years in, knock on wood, this is the death do us part, I'm doing, I'm moving in an amazing direction, but I had to take accountability to my lack of empathy in my first marriage so that I could apply new learning, right, in my second marriage and get better and do better and live better. And so I do very much feel like what I learned was something I could apply once I owned that it was my responsibility to be empathetic. So for me, it wasn't whether it was a skill or not. I believe you. I agree with you. It makes sense to me. My blockage was whether it was my responsibility as a leader to be empathetic of what was going on with people, right? How their kids were doing, right? If they had something going on in their family. And once I started to understand that the deeper the relationships that you have with your team members, right, allows you now to move further faster, because just like in any partnership or team, when you start to be able to repeat each other's sentences, when you understand the movements of your team member, this is whether it's military, sports, or business, that level of chemistry is born out of true care for the wellness of your team member, right? And then I started to think about, wait a minute, the delivery is different than on the football field, but the care and the commitment needs to be the same. And so as soon as I could reconcile those things, then I really started to work on it and I started to work with it. And the other thing that I'll say that I've really been able to adopt, I would say I've accelerated things life-wise, business-wise over the last 10 years of my career, because I've been really open to learning and application of that learning. Once I took personal responsibility for all aspects of my behavior, I was able to grow as a significant leader.
Yeah.
I was a good enough salesperson where if you and I were talking about an issue, I could figure out a way to package it, right? That it wasn't me, it was you. Right. I was too good at it. I grew up in business development. As an entrepreneur, you got to get the deal. So that means if I didn't want to take accountability, I was good enough at communicating a narrative that I could put the responsibility on someone else that then didn't hold me truly accountable. And when I really had to unpack what I learned in my marriage, what I learned as a father, what I learned as a leader, it's like, wait a minute, you are responsible. And since you are responsible, then you need to make sure that that individual knows the things you're going to work on, the things they need to work on, and the things you're going to do together. And then when I align those three things together, personal accountability, team accountability, and then holding my other teammates for their personal stuff, now all of a sudden we had a balanced set of conversations that we could all get behind. And I became a more significant leader with a higher impact and a higher upside. And
100%. 100%. I resonate with that deeply. And I want to ask you about that because, you know, I see this because I consult big companies, not as much as I used to. I now tend to consult people like you, right? I'm like, oh, you love your team? Let me help you scale, right?
love it. Yeah.
And I've been in corporations and many of them, you know, Fortune 50 companies. And one of the things that I used to run into, no, that's HR's job. That's HR's job, right? No, that's that person's job. And there's this, you know, false belief like relationships are all of our jobs, right? Like it's this cohesion and culture that's created and it's everybody's responsibility, which I love. And I want to ask you a question about this because I'm going to put on the devil's advocate hat, and I don't have this, but I know somebody listening potentially might. It's like, but then don't I become friends with my team? Like, where's the line?
I love that. Friendship is casual. Friendship is let's just go have a beer. Friendship is let's just talk about the game. All those things are good in small doses in the workplace, right? But my job as a leader is not to be your best friend. My job as a leader is to maximize your potential and help you gain the meaningful goals that you have. And in order for me to get the goals that you have, I have to ask you about them. I have to actually care. I have to understand if you want to get your MBA part-time. So then do I set up stretch assignments where you're not just looking as a sales professional, but you're working a little bit with marketing. You're working a little bit with product because I know what you want. Is work during this period of time just work for you because you've got two teenage kids that are getting ready to graduate and go to college and you want to spend every extra moment with them before they leave the house? If I don't know where you are in your life and how it relates to work, then I can't coach and mentor you. But my goal is not be your buddy. You got to find that outside of me as your leader. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's just not my thing. Empathy to me is knowing you enough to where I can move the needles with you. Yep. So that if you achieve your highest personal and professional goals, you're going to actually more align with the goals I have. Because if you're winning, you're going to create that habit in anything I asked you to do. So I want you to win at life. I want you to win with your kids. I want all of those things. And so here's how it breaks down. I was talking with a CEO. I'm on the board of a digital marketing firm, and we hired a new CEO, worked with him in the past, great guy. He was texting me back and forth, and it was on the weekend. My kids are all out of the house. I'm open. But I said, Greg, just push this to our Monday meeting, right? Go handle what you got to handle as a family. I needed to give that CEO space that the way we worked before doesn't equal the way we work now because he has 2 young kids. When we worked together before, he was single, no kids, no wife, just chasing career aspirations, right? And so I said, Greg, if it can wait till Monday, if it doesn't, if it's urgent and important, we'll deal with it, right? But most things are not. And so I was empathetic to him and for him and gave him license to put things in the right bucket and released him from that, right? And empathetic leadership without action towards empathy is just textbook stuff. People see through that. It's pep rally stuff. It's when did you ever win a game because you had a great pep rally?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's not like
Yeah. It's lip service,
right?
At a deep level.
But it's got to show up in the way that you work. And another thing I learned, we have so many meetings in our world, right? One-on-one meetings, 30-minute checkpoint meetings, right? Hourly review meetings, quarterly review meetings. We have so many meetings structured in any kind of environment of any size and scale. How do you set the table for that meeting? Team, this is what we're going to cover. Here are the 3 pillars of the meeting. I'm going to give the overview. Assistant sent out a briefing doc. Everybody good to go with these 3 pillars for what we're going to have. We cover and discuss 20, 25 minutes as we wrap. Let me go round table, rapid fire for 1 minute. Any comments, concerns, anything that we didn't bring out that anybody wants to share. Whether people take advantage of that or not is not on me. Me creating the space where everyone feels like they can be heard, that no one feels left out, where I'm open for feedback and critique of how to have a better meeting next time or any support or roadblocks. That's my responsibility as a leader to show up empathetic. Most people think empathy is some soft, fuzzy, flowery thing, but it's really how do I help your day go better, stronger while we're meeting these objectives together, and knowing that some days you're going to help me lift as a team member, and some days I'm going to help you lift.
Yep.
Some days I'm going to need to lend you courage, and some days I'm going to borrow yours. And if we understand that, now we're putting empathy in actionable terms, which is where I think most people live because they trust your actions more than your words. If your words line up with your actions, then you're a leadership superstar, right?
Yep.
They'll trust your actions at whatever level you are. But if your words and your actions line up, now you have something even different than trust. You're building loyalty. You can build trust with just you're consistent, you're reliable, all of those different things. But when your words, the vision you paint, the trust in the way you lead, the empathy, now you're building the superstar, which is loyalty. Now when a headhunter calls one of your top people, they come and talk to you first about what's missing in the role before they just bounce and you get 2 weeks notice. They give you a chance to fix it, change it, make it better, or give them advice on their next thing. That's loyalty. Loyalty is when one of the team members on my team heard me speak in a presentation and I used a phrase that didn't land well. Sends me a Slack, says, Don, I just want to give you this feedback. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean for it to go that way, but now I can do better next time. And to the person it didn't land well with, I could send a quick note. At least because somebody trusted me enough to give me that feedback, I could be stubborn or I could be a strong leader. And I decided to be a strong leader and address it. And most people, right, they just want to see your authenticity show up in the moments that it matters. They do not expect you to be perfect.
Yeah.
The team member that I apologized to, that I just was a little over the top on, it just didn't land well. I had a moment, right? I'm a human, right? I'm a work in progress. But they were like, you know what, DT, man, thank you for that. Right? We can move on, but just thank you for like just acknowledging that was a little much. We're good. Right? Let's keep it moving. But I gave them space to give me feedback, but I wouldn't have known to do that if I didn't have team members that could trust. I'll say this last thing, and you just got me fired up. I don't know what happened.
I'm in for it, man. I got notes over here, so like, you just rant. You got
me really jazzed. And so I send ideas to my team because I just love what I'm doing. Like I'm trying to help others and grow. And so I'm writing a book called, it's around employee engagement. So I won't go into it too much, but I wanted to add a section around how leaders need to create meaningful work for their team. because people commit when they're doing work that's connected to the business outcome. And how do we do that? And so I write like a page. I've got these ideas and I outline 4 or 5 points, and I confuse my editor because it's off track of the thing they're working on. And I'm trying to merge 2 projects together. So one of my senior leaders pulled me aside and said, Don, great note. Can we stay on the course with project 1? And I think what you're doing is its own separate project, not shoehorning it into this one track. So if we could stay on this track, what we're doing for this project, for this audience, and then can we come back in a week and brainstorm with you about a new course, a new book, a new line of thinking, right? That we can build some content around. And I was like, of course. I only wanted my idea to be heard and evaluated. But as leaders, our passion sometimes turns into dictate, whether we intend to or not. And I'm very glad that I do have some folks that have worked with me for a while that know I'm super passionate, but I don't want to dictate to our team what they do every step. And that I was very open to that pushback. I said, thank you. Yes, let's talk about it in a week. Right.
Yep.
And keep it moving. So anyway,
You're
I'm
good.
jazzed about this topic.
I'm going to summarize some of this because you talked about boundaries, you talked about empathy, you talked about loyalty, you really talked about alignment at the deep level. And then even the one big point, because I'm going to tie all this together for like a minute or two and share a story. You also, without specifically mentioning it, talked about humility. And I'm an unapologetic lover of Jesus my whole life, right? And save for the last 2 years, but tanting. And I wrote this on a sticky note one day because I was listening to the sermon, and I keep them in front of me on the wall. And I wrote, humility is honey for God. And I also believe that humility is honey, and it's the sweetest gift that you can give your team, that you can give your customers, that you can give your clients, and you can give another human being. And I hear this in a lot of things that you're talking about, because as you were sharing and taking empathy and making it pragmatic, I think I would personally replace the word empathy with consideration. Like, consideration is the active form of empathy, in my opinion. It's the verb, right? And it's that consideration. It's taking that 30 minutes because the team needs it, right? And it's not I'm going to have to do another hour of work later. It's like, I'm investing this 30 minutes right now for an immeasurable return, and I will gladly invest this and then invest in myself later, because the loyalty that you're speaking about, and alignment and actions and words, it's a two-way street. Because, my CEO, she's incredible, but she's a single mom with an incredible son. And she's taught me boundaries way better than I've ever taught her boundaries. And, I'll send the text, and I'm a single dad. I got my son, but like, he's entertained. So it's like 11 p.m. and I'm like, I need this done. She just ghosts me, right? Just ghosts me. And then I'll be like, whoa. And then she's like, one day, she's like, we need to talk. I was like, what? She's like, I'm with my son. Like, it can wait. And, here's your pass, but next time I'm just going to tell you no, or I'm just going to ignore it. And now I'm like completely trained. And I like process my own ideas and like, oh, I'll send it to her Monday. Right. Or having boundaries here. And so I also like invite everybody to understand that it's a two-way street. And there's an inception point I wanted to make, DT. Is it okay that I call you DT?
Yeah, man, I'm into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said it. So I was like, I'll ask just to make sure I get consent. But one of those things that you were talking about as a leader, I think, for me, and I am far from perfect, right? I'm learning every single day. I feel like now at like 20 years into my career, I know less than I did 20 years ago, and I have more to learn than I've ever had to learn. But you were talking about how when our actions align with our words, we create loyalty, what we would call buy-in. I think the deeper point that I would make for everybody, because there might be somebody listening that's like, well, I don't have a team. I only have a contractor yet. And here's the point. That loyalty also is created with ourselves. When the things that we speak out align with the things that we hold ourselves accountable to.
Love that.
And we have consideration for our own self. Like, I'm a single dad going through a divorce, right? And I'm bringing Jesus to the best of my ability in the middle of this. And there's days where I'm off. There's days where I am down. There's days where like, I feel like I have no capacity. And as crazy as this is, half of those times I'm having consideration for myself. I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? Take an extra 10 minutes, go sit by the lake and do this. And then I'll jump on a client call. I'm like, hey, I just want to be really honest with you. I'm stoked to be here today. I've had kind of like a rough morning. Can we just chat for like 5 minutes to fill my bucket? And they're like, I would love to. And then I'm like, great. And then I get to perform my best because I feel like I'm in integrity with what's happening in my life and what's happening in my world. I'm not putting on a mask. I'm not putting on a show.
Yep.
And it's interesting because now I have clients who I love you, Carolyn. I know you're listening to this. Well, we'll jump on our weekly coaching call and she'll look at me. She did this 2 weeks ago and she's like, what's up, honey? And I'm like this. And she's like, great. Well, I'm not getting coached by you today. I am coaching you today. And it's this beautiful thing to where when we look at empathy and we look at leadership and we look at communication, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves by also only keeping it in the bucket of ourselves or our team, because also our clients are people that we're in relationships with. Our clients are human beings that also feel the same things and want us to be a human because they want us to perform our best. And so hearing all of that, there was like a masterclass in boundaries, consideration, loyalty, actions, and words. And I think it's just an important nugget for all of us to understand because we're constantly improving.
It's way more fun. And I love how you tied everything together, and that's a skill. And I appreciate that and the way you did that for your audience and for me in this moment. The one thing I would say to extend that, right, is it's way more fun to be your authentic self and not wear so many masks.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm actually so much stronger because I'm not a pretender. Right. Like if you want to buy and work with who I am, let's rock it. Let's do it. Right. If I'm not the right person for you, man, I'm going to help you find that right executive coach, that right advisor, that right. Like I'm going to help you find it because that's still a win for me if I get you in the right place. Right. And so what you're describing also is the freedom, right, to be your full self.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to model that for people, right? You mentioned your love for Jesus and different things. I share that faith. And whether someone believes in Jesus, has another religion, most of the religions have a focus and a cornerstone on goodness to others, right? Like, and so when I'm talking to people about all kinds of things, I like to try to like centralize what is that kernel that there's just 1,000% agreement.
Yep.
Right. And then let's build from that kernel and talk together. And so your point of there's folks that are listening that are solopreneurs, right? And so they've got to operate, right, as their own business system, right? They are scale, right, to themselves, right? But they are also learning how to grow and lead through their personal walk and what they expect, right? The people they're going to choose as they grow if they want to move from that solo entrepreneur and have 4 or 5 people. And in fact, the skills we're talking about are even more important. First hire, second hire, third hire, because that's where you're building that formal nucleus to where everything will expand. And so I love how you made sure that we brought it to where not just our larger clients or people that are listening, right, but folks that have big business, right? Because size of business and scale is all relative, right? Because I work with a lot of businesses with thousands of employees and they're not making a nickel.
Yep.
Right. And I work with people with 5 people and man, and they're making more profit than the other. Like, so, scale and different things are relative, when you think about business. But I do like the fact that you show up on this podcast with me and you show up as that authentic self. And that's one of the things that unlocked. It's why I'm so excited to be here. Yeah. Right. Because I'm much more open. I can be guarded. I can be corporate. I don't really know your audience, different things. I can morph to what's required. Right. But you gave me permission to be myself.
Yeah. Oh, I want all of it, Matt. I want the
you know what I mean? Like
you
gave me the freedom to say, look, this is what my audience wants. This is what we're trying to do. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, of course. And like, thank you for seeing me. I think you even said something that brings me to like the next point where, you were talking about modeling, right? And I actually think if you tie humility, right, like this level of like self-awareness, self-integrity, and we take these reflections and then we model, that's where authenticity actually comes from, because our brains need evidence, right? They need evidence, right? They need what's called episodic memory to reference of like, this is where it is. Like we need these moments where we're like, oh, I've been in this situation before. Oh, but there was that one time where I just authentically shared my feelings and it went really well. And the more of those that we collect, the more that becomes our default operating system, right? And, I learned modeling in an interesting way, right? Because just like you, yours came from sales, mine came from survival and being homeless at like 13. So I had to become a chameleon to get food and to get a job and to find places to sleep. And so I became, and I'll own this, a manipulation machine, right? And then I go into literally the most toxic corporate culture in the world called the United States Marine Corps, right? Where everything is about politics and positioning and finding your way. And to your point, like, how do I have to package this? How can I shuck responsibility? How can I take responsibility that wasn't mine in the first place and get credit for it, right?
Yep.
And so I had in my life learned all these hard and soft skills logically, but I had never embodied them emotionally. So they were a manipulation tool. And I say this on the podcast before. There's a version of me. If you go listen to podcasts 10 years ago, I can tell you how the intro to every one of them went. I told you the whole story, the sexual abuse, the drug abuse, because everyone's like, you're being so authentic. I'm like, no, I am not. I am giving you a shell in front of me that's authentic, so you don't know how I really feel in this moment, because I'm petrified. I'm scared of judgment. I'm scared of rejection. I don't know how to sit still. And I've learned through modeling, this is the hilarious part, and it's with my son. My daughter's 20 and my son's 8.5, right? And we were having an issue, and this, everyone can laugh at this, where he was getting so frustrated because he was like drawing a picture and then he would mess up. So he'd crumple it up and he'd throw it away and he'd be really frustrated. And I was talking to one of his teachers and they're incredible. I was like, Brooke, I don't know how to parent this. And she's like, George, do you ever make mistakes? I was like, all the time. She's like, okay, when was the last time? I was like, oh, I spilled my coffee this morning. And she's like, okay, what'd you do? And I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, I can't believe I did that. Boom, boom, boom. And she's like, great. So what do you think he's seen? And I was like, uh-oh. And she's like, here's what I want you to do. And she's like, you're going to make 100 mistakes today. When you are in front of him, and she's like, this is going to make you drastically uncomfortable, and you make a mistake, I want you to look him in the eyes and say, oopsie, with a fun, playful manner. And I was like, and then what? And then she's like, laugh at yourself. And literally, it was that day I had done something and I'd spilt food on the floor because I was in a rush. And I was like, it drops, and like my body wanted to be like, right? Like that inner Marine. And then I was like, I remembered and I was like, oopsie. And he's like, oopsie. I was like, yeah, how silly. Daddy just spilled the food. I'm going to have to make it again. Good thing we can make more. And the craziest thing, he laughed with me. I cried that night for probably like 2 hours because I'd never been modeled how to make mistakes. I'd never been modeled that we're all going to make them. I was always all or nothing, have to survive and do it perfectly. And I think there's this big invitation for all of us to allow our humanity in our life. Like, your business is not a separate entity than you. It's a world developing you, but it's bringing all of you into it. And that silly moment of like me spilling food and the teacher being like, George, just say oopsie out loud. DT, I can't tell you how many conference rooms I've been in. And I said something that didn't land, but I caught it. And I'm like, oopsie. And they're like, huh? And I was like, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to say that. That slipped. I don't know where that came from. And they're like, did you just say oopsie?
Oopsie.
Like, we paid you all this money and you're saying oopsie. And I'm like, yeah. And then it turns into this incredible conversation in this moment. And I think for me, part of, the thread of this conversation is empathy is a trainable skill, but what it requires is this embodiment and practice to take these things that we know logically, like we know on paper, we know if we listen, if we ask questions, but then finding a playful manner to almost like reparent ourselves in the process and train these skills and these default reactions. So when you said modeling, I wanted to share that.
That is, that's awesome. Right. Like I don't know any other way to describe it, because when a story resonates, right, you immediately can unpack some areas where you got that wrong, can learn, can grow.
Yep.
And that you mentioned with your son, but that's the same thing, how we show up as leaders for our teams, right? You can, just like we can teach the skill set of empathy, we can teach resilience.
Yes.
Right? Like, we don't have to minimize, right? I'll give an example of, like, if you're, in my case, like, and this was a few years ago, but in one of my technology companies, we lost close to $1 million deal, and we were a small 140 person firm. So, like, it was a big deal. My VP of sales was telling me what happened. They pushed the RFP, just all the different things but we were planning on winning, right? We had a great shot. And I said, let's go get something to eat. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, well, it's lunch, right? He's like, yeah. He said, are you hungry? He said, well, yeah. I said, well, we should still eat. Like, we should talk, like, right? And so we went through and we talked about how we were going to mitigate the risk. And one of the things we talked about is if you win $1 million deal in services, you're not going to be able to capture all that revenue in year one. So we thought through and said, wait a minute, right? It's going to be a third over a couple of years. So really what we have to recapture is $300,000 this year. And we broke it down into a solvable problem, and we went and worked to address the shortfall. But if you think about it just as $1 million thing, you're panicking. Like, now you're not solving anything, right? You're not teaching resilience, and we just worked through it. Yeah. Right. We figured it out together. Right. It was painful. It didn't feel good. Right. But, like, we figured it out. And I think that modeling and the story that you told is awesome. I do not have anything to add to that. I wrote that you can teach resilience, that you can model how you handle mistakes. You can take accountability, but, like, you can communicate to self and others, hey, this is going to be okay.
Yeah. And I want to add a note, because you said this earlier when you were talking about, I'm a recovering personal development coach. I spent, 5 years of my life facilitating personal development seminars. And, this concept broke my brain a little bit, but you talked about, personal responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. And there was this thing where I used to say things in this room, and I'm like, well, I take responsibility. And the trainers would rip me to pieces. And they're like, oh, took it? Like, it wasn't yours to begin with? Like, you can take it off and give it away? No. It's implied. It's always and always will be your responsibility. It's just you're either in avoidance of it or in denial of it. And then we see books like Jocko's, or even biblically, right? 100% ownership, 100% of time. Like, there's these concepts where we're building this relationship with it over time. And when I was sharing that story, the one note that I wanted to make for everybody, one of the mistakes that I used to make is, I believe my intuition is the voice of God. He guides me and tells me, and he just asks me to pick up the phone. But I would be in a conversation like this, and I'd be like, oh, I called him DT, but I didn't ask his permission. Oh, I'll do it later. But then later never comes. I don't know when we get off this podcast if it was okay that I called you that. And so then I just created this ripple, and I already knew in my heart, because it hit my intuition or tickled myself, that I was I should ask. So I think in training this resiliency, but also training this muscle of empathy, it's like, if you leave the office today and you're driving in the car and you're like, man, I thought about DT. Like, I feel like I should have asked this. What creates loyalty on top of actions and words is also initiating the recovery, even if you're like, dude, of course, everybody calls me DT. But there's something to be said about it later, because you're like, man, like, I'm totally fine. He calls me DT, but he reached out to clean this up.
That's right.
He reached out to recover this. Like, even with you, and you shared this story earlier, which is why I'm bringing it up. This thing didn't land. Well, when you had that team, or you had that self-reflection, one of the mistakes that I made for so long is I would have those, but then that guilt would weigh on my heart, and I would never take action on it because I was afraid of the response or the consequences. But then I started practicing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to send this message. I'm going to send this apology. I'm going to call the client back. Right. And I even do it now in the simplest of forms, like with my partner, who I love, because I'm on the one that's, forever, like the one God made for me. Right. And love you, honey. And we'll get off the phone, and like within a minute, I'm like, I don't like how we got off the phone. We got off too quick. Like I felt like I wasn't present when I said I love you, and I don't ever want that to go. And I'll call her back, and she's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you have this. I was like, yeah, but it's a feeling. So like, hey, look at me. I was like, I just want you to know that I love you, and I mean it, even if I was rushed. And those moments,
Good for you, man.
But I'm sharing this for everybody because, like, in my opinion, those moments are the action items that strengthen empathy, but also create that loyalty and create that culture because it's being modeled.
That's
And
right.
I think that that's the invitation that we all have as leaders, is to lean into that, because what's the worst that happens? I call him like, hey man, like completely forgot to ask if it was okay. You're like, dude, what are you talking about? Like totally fine.
But we put a bow on it for you.
But we put a bow on it, but I'd rather live in that, because what's the worst that happens? You're like, it was fine, but what's the best that happens?
Yep.
Oh man, like I didn't know, because like I have an instance in mind with somebody in my audience who, she goes by this beautiful name, and I shortened it one day. And I'll never forget this. I shortened it in the middle of an event, and she just let me do it because her father was in the military. She respected that of me. But then other people started calling her by this name. And it took her a little while to come tell me. And I'm talking little while, like months. And then I was like mortified because there was a trigger in there. And I almost amplified that trigger. And I did for other people.
Yep.
And so she's like, George, like, I get it. Like, I love it. I would just love it if you would call me, by my full name. And I'm like, 100%. And we went through this season. She's like, you're the only one who can. Is it okay? Is it still okay? And then one day she changed it. And then I, in front of a large group of people, said, and by the way, this is my doing, and I'm so sorry. I never took into consideration this. I never thought about this. And I look at like empathy now, and like those are the moments where God gives us the opportunity to flex and train that muscle, but we have to take it.
We have to take it, and we have to remember. And I am, I'll say this quickly. The God that I serve is forgiving. So the problem is not the God we serve. It's our walk and our modeling and not following the modeling. Yes. And that's why we have all this apprehension about seeking forgiveness, about asking an apology, about thoughtfulness, because we're actually picking and choosing against the modeling, right? And that gets pretty hard over time. And that's where the heaviness comes from. Right. Versus following the modeling.
100%.
And so, it's an interesting dynamic, right? As we talk about faith and commerce and different things, but I am a very simple guy that's trying to do complex things. And so I always have to start with some really fundamental things. And that means that mistakes aren't fatal, but it does require ownership, acceptance, right? And then what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, what do you like? And those things I think are important, whether we put a biblical frame on it, an empathetic frame on it, right? A psychology frame on it. Like wisdom is kind of wisdom. And so whatever package you want to put on it, that's fine by me. Right. Like, I don't really get up in arms when I'm talking to people. I just know that most real wisdom is kind of universal.
100%. And I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but it reminded me of something before I ask you about healthy tension. I also found that one of my coping mechanisms or hiding places was asking why. I know psychology. I've studied it. I know personal development. I've studied it. I now realize why the quote is the devil is in the details, because the details are happening in rumination in our brain, and we are not taking action from our heart. So it's a distraction. It prevents me from cleaning it up. Well, why would I do that? Well, but why do I need to? Like, where did I learn this? And all of those things are just delaying the next bite that's in front of me.
That's right. We can drive our car and drink a cup of coffee, so we can fix it right with our teammate while we're unpacking it.
100%.
So I am with you, right? Yes. We just agree. Like I don't.
Yeah. And I think
just agree.
It's important because it's like Play-Doh, right? Like you're like, hey, the situation, we lost $1 million deal, right? And it's gone. So how are we going to work this Play-Doh?
That's right.
Right. And it's like, and I've said this to people before, like they'll call me in meltdown. I lost everything. I've lost everything multiple times. Right. And then I was victim-y, right? I'm like, oh my God, like somebody come save me.
Which is part of it. You just don't live in it.
I even remembered at one point, I'm like, I need a sugar mama. I'll take a sugar daddy at this point, right? Like, you tell me what you need. I'm skilled. And then I had to have this really honest conversation with myself. And I'm like, well, am I going to close the business? And the answer was no. And then I'm like, then what am I doing? Because like nothing is getting done.
That's awesome.
I'll own it.
That's awesome.
I used to have the illusion. I'm like, I've scaled all these companies. I know all these people. Like, I know a couple billionaires. I'm like, what would I have to ask them to like just give me like $5 million, right? Things that I used to think about as a kid. I'm like, they have enough. They won't even notice it. And then I'm like, well, no, because then I wouldn't value it anyways. I didn't earn it, right? Like it's, boom, boom, boom. And so, I did it. I did it all. I workshop really well inside my head.
Hey,
like,
man, that's awesome.
This is why I pray now all the time. So I wanted to ask you, because I love this, and I said this in the intro. So I'm now closing the loop for all of you. And if you want to know what that is, it's called the Zygarnik effect. But healthy tension. I love this concept of healthy tension, but can you just unpack that for me? Because you say like a good environment and leaders need to create healthy tension.
Yeah. So let's just say I have an idea of how something can be done and you have a different perspective, right? Well, the healthy tension often leads to the third rail, which is the innovation and the new idea.
Yep.
But if you spend time trying to figure out who's going to win the conversation, you end up with warm tea, right? If you think about having a glass of tea, iced tea, or you want hot tea. I've never in my life had somebody order warm tea, right? Like nobody wants that. That's a lack of commitment, right? You want hot tea, right? You want to put some lemon in it, right? You got to or you want iced tea, right? But I've never heard anybody go to the counter and say, I would like warm tea, right?
I want soda with melted ice.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so, right, yeah. And so when you're trying to win the conversation versus solve the business problem, trying to win the conversation versus serving your client, right? Now, all of a sudden, if we're trying to find the best answer for the business, we end up with our differing thought process. There's usually a third idea that comes from it. Or if we're workshopping things together real time, we will figure out who has the better approach. But because our goal is on that prize of what's best for the business, not our ego with what feels best for me in that moment, now that healthy tension can give you the ability to actually innovate. But you have to create it like this. As a leader in your business, the faster I speak about the way I see the world, the less collaboration I get. The more I ask questions about how are we going to solve this together? Let's define the problem well first. What are our options? Does anyone have any ideas that they want to unpack with the group? The longer I resist my desire to speak up of my idea, the more I'm training my team to now create the best idea. Yep. And by being quiet, oftentimes my team still surprise me. They'll describe something I wasn't even thinking about. I'm like, oh, I'm glad my value to this meeting was shutting up.
Yep.
Because I would have ruined it because I had a B answer and somebody else had an A+ answer. My B answer was going to work. Their A answer was going to work and set the stage for even more business after. Their A answer was going to solve the problem and give us something we could replicate and package to other clients. My B answer was just going to solve the problem in some cases. Yep. And so to the degree that I facilitate, it allows the team to now fully develop. And that's something that I really, really want, right? Because that's scale, that's lifestyle as a leader. That is how you grow. And I've not grown billion-dollar companies, but I've grown a handful of companies to some reasonable numbers, and you can't do it alone. And so if you're the singular point of answer for everything in your business, you should be a little concerned. And even if you are a solopreneur, because what you want to be doing as a solopreneur, and I appreciate you bringing me back to that, so I'm going to answer in multiple contexts. Mm-hmm. If you're a solopreneur, you still don't have to all the answers. You need to be joining CEO networking groups. You need to have a mentor. You need to take some nickels out of the cupboard and get a coach so that you are now having somebody that is stress testing pressure testing the way you're thinking about the world, and you'll continue to grow faster. And so being alone is a choice, even if you only have one or two folks in your business, because there's a lot of opportunities for folks to help that want to give you good feedback.
Yeah, I want to tie this together, and this is relationship advice as well as it is healthy tension advice, because you said this and alluded to this, but I want to put a bow on this in a really simple form. When there's an issue, a challenge, a creative idea, it's not you against the other person, it's both of you against the issue. Right? Like, I got a phone call in the middle of the night a couple weeks ago from some dear friends, and they used my phone number as the 911 in the middle of a relationship fight. That never happens. I was kind of shocked. And I don't know why intuitively. I just thank God for putting these words in my heart. And I just remembered, I said, hey, by the way, it's not you two against each other. It's you two against this thing that doesn't feel good. And in this moment and in this situation, what you're also talking about, which I love, is it's also alignment versus agreement. Like, I get really afraid when it's like, I walk into companies or even have my own, we're like, hey guys, I have this idea. And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, wait, hold on. No. Because there is no way that I've pressure tested this all the way through. I'm a visionary, right? I'm living over here. I'm like, we're missing some pieces. Like, don't let me jump off the cliff here, right? Like, pressure test it, right? And creating that healthy environment. I love the way that you called it out, in actionable items for everybody is, asking more questions, creating a common objective, figuring out how to have everybody be heard. And then I love how it creates the third option. And I will always give you credit because I'm going to use the warm tea analogy. Right? Like, it's like you get a hot chocolate and then it gets cool and you're like, I wish it was hot, or a cup of coffee. Like, you didn't order a warm coffee, right? And I think, probably, and maybe this is just my own view, that we've almost accidentally created this environment where we get warm tea because of the lack of empathy. So everything is done in black and white now. People don't feel safe. It's rigid. It's this, it's that, it's check a box. And I think the invitation is understanding that, like, tension is a good thing. Anybody in a relationship will know.
That's right.
Healthy tension is what keeps the spark alive, right? When you
disagreement is not the issue. It is how we communicate it.
Yep.
And I interrupt you. I apologize.
No, interrupt me, bro.
It's that communication. Like, it's
yes.
the words we use, right? It's
yes.
whether we're a little too harsh and disagreeing with someone's idea, so now they're defensive, right? And the thing that I've learned to do, and this is where my sales background really helped, if somebody has an idea that I don't agree with or I can't get with, I was like, listen, I want to leave this meeting aligned with you. Can you explain your thought process around this a little bit more? I'm not quite there yet, but I want to be.
Yep.
Right. Can you give me a little more on this part of your decision making? And as people talk to answer that question, often they'll see my point of view just through that little pause I gave, not because I said, no, that's not going to work. There's no way we can meet that dollar amount. In fact, like, we're insulted. Like, we agreed to something different. All of those things are winning the conversation, right? Versus getting people to some point of agreement that we can jump off on, or at least not agree, right? Hey, listen, we're not going to be able to make it on this. We're not the right vendor or partner. Your view on value and cost, like, we're not in alignment here, but, like, let's not blow this thing up. The next thing might be great.
Yep.
Right. So our tone and our terminology is really, really important. And I'll tell this one story. This was early in my sales career. I was selling a big company X in Boston, and I'm a young whippersnapper salesperson. And our company was already delivering technology to this bigger organization. So I'm trying to upsell the business and grow more technology services partners. We're an outsourced development organization in the engineering space. But we'd missed a deliverable. So there was one person in this meeting, and she was mad, right? Because we had made her project late. There was a little overrun. She was mad. And she was mad to where she was using a lot of aggressive language in this group of 3 or 4. And it's just me and 5 people that are in this company. And I finally was like, how am I going to get her to just stop it? Right? Like, how am I going to wind this down? Because I can't upsell. I'm getting pissed off Cause like, she's like, this isn't like, there's just all that can happen is bad, right? In this situation, if she keeps, so I said, let's just say Gloria, cause just for who's listening, even though it was years ago, I said, Gloria, I said, how is the way you're talking to me helping solve the problem? Because I'm sure that by now I understand you're pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
You have clearly communicated that. At what point are we going to get to what are we going to do next? Or is this our final meeting together and you just want to get it off our chest and you're going to fire us and we're done? And then the other folks were like, we're not firing you. You're working on 8 different projects for us. Right. And so Gloria stopped for a minute and she goes, she just thought for a minute, this is what would make it right for me. She wanted us to do a get well project.
Mm-hmm.
To help her recoup some of her P&L that we had messed up. I said, Gloria, is that it? She said, yeah. She said, if you did this, this, and this, and just kind of just met me a part of the way with the next thing we did together. I said, like, why didn't you just say that? Like, this could have been shorter. Well, it doesn't say that in our contract. I said, listen, Gloria, thank you. Can we talk about this offline? But I'm sure I can talk to my CEO about getting you some get well hours over the course of the year to just get this thing back on track.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to resist that urge to get into the volume because she was very upset.
Yeah.
She was dropping some F-bombs. Like she was really mad. But I really learned a lot in that moment that people, even at their heightened state of discomfort, there's usually a kernel where we can get there together if one of us acts with humility.
Yep.
Right. And I listen, I wasn't always the one, like I had to learn a lot, but in that moment I did. And I was proud of that. And then she came around and we fixed it and we got back on track with the rest of them. But man, she was really mad.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, and I'll say this for everybody too. I don't think any of us are ever the best at it. It's the willingness to try at it. Right. Because I have moments like a week and a half ago, one came up and I was like, oh, and I wasn't the one to get off the dance floor, right? Like, the other person was, and I was like, oh, God, did I get something to learn here? I was like, that's the humility part, right? It's this practice, over and over. But I think, to even as we start to land the plane, to tie it all together, because you said this earlier, what it allows us to be is to operate in our best because we're the safest, because we're authentic, and there is no way to do it perfectly, right? Like it's just a way to learn and to adjust and, to take it on, per se. And one of my favorite quotes, somebody said this to me years ago, but I think you'll appreciate it. He said, just remember this about like life. He said, a student says, I already know, and a master says, thanks for the reminder. And that has served me quite well in constantly being reminded, like there isn't a finish line to this. What we're talking about is like, for those of us that have kids, you're creating an environment just like raising your child, right? I remember my daughter got her hormones at like 12 and was dropping F-bombs at me and telling me I was the worst dude ever, and then crying in my arms 5 minutes later. I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't fight her back, right? Like she's like, I'm so sorry, I don't know what's happening to me. And I'm
Right.
like, I love you, honey, right? And it's like we get to allow humanity. And I think underneath all of this, for everybody, there's humanity. There's an invitation for more humanity in the current disconnected world, in the disconnected cultures, in the way social media has changed it. But that humanity isn't just for us and our team. It's for you and yourself. It's for you and your team. It's also for you and your clients to go back and forth both ways. And like this episode is like loaded with nuggets of like, and you said this too, managing relationships with effective communication, right? Like I don't remember any part in my Bible or any other life advice I've ever had that said like you're supposed to be numb every day. Like you're not supposed to have emotions, right? You're supposed to be able to have them, but also to process them. And when you process them with somebody, they become a massive catalyst and breakthrough to be witnessed in it. It's like the number one thing in therapy and work is to be witnessed in it. And like these are tools to allow that. And it builds that deep endowment, right? Because I've had Gloria moments, right? I had one about a year ago. I was visibly shaking for 2.5 days because I was told I was a charlatan and I gaslit, I was a narcissist, I was abusive. And I just remember I was praying my way through the call,
Mm.
like, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Like, I never intended that, boom, boom, boom. And then a month later, I got like a 17-minute audio message with like the biggest apology. I don't know how you handled that call. Like, I love you to pieces. Can we please catch up? It had nothing to do with you, boom, boom, boom. But like, just even how you handled that call helped me realize and reflect on
That's good
X, Y,
stuff.
and Z. And I think it's an invitation for all of us, right? And I
That's
just,
awesome.
yeah, there's the things that you share. By the way, I also love how you tell stories and I love how you teach. I'm going to just say this in front of everybody. Do not put him and I on the same stage together for a 1-hour talk, because you're going to be there for 9 hours and we will feed off each other back and forth. Like, strap in your seatbelt, because I
Oh
could do this
man,
with you all day.
this has been. My last thing that I want to say as we land the plane is thank you for having me.
Oh,
Like
honor.
I've got my page of notes, like little vignettes, and even though I know I'll get the recording and transcripts, but like I need it now, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what I'm hearing, and this has been helpful to me. And anytime we can share energy with people in that good space, right? Because you don't know what kind of day I had
Yep.
or what kind of day audience. And so this has been super helpful, just sharing space and energy with you. And hopefully this is great for your audience, and that this won't be the last time that we rock and roll together. I
Oh, no.
really, this is
Selfishly,
great. This is great.
I don't care if anybody listens to this episode. I'm stoked. My
This
bucket's full,
this is
right?
great.
Like, I'm like, I just found another long lost brother. I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
let's
right. This is great.
go. Right. And yeah, and truthfully, the way that you articulate, the way that you share, because you said this at the beginning of the show, the pragmatic approach is here, right? Like,
That's right.
the tangible examples, the way that you do it. And I'm going to tie this together for everybody too, because I'm going to obviously ask where everybody can connect with you and where to find you. But, I started the show by saying, the king of empathy and economics. This whole episode was focused on empathy, and here's why. Empathy is what drives economics, and it's the foundational piece that allows them to work. And so all too often we fall into the trap of like, what's the strategy? What's the tactic? What's the thing? And unfortunately, there isn't a shortcut. There's an embodiment. But I promise you, because I do this and I do the same thing that he does, when you can bring human into an environment, somehow magically the economics always handle themselves. Somehow magically somebody takes ownership of a line item that they were neglecting before. Somebody brings a diverse idea that nobody had thought about before. Somebody starts performing better in their current role, to where you celebrate it, don't make them bad and be like, why weren't you doing this before? No, because it was lacking the leadership to create and foster that environment. The empathy that was talked about in this episode is I would submit the foundational requirement to have a chance for lasting success. Can you get short-term wins? Sure. Can you burn bridges and have high employee turnover? Sure. Can you ever recover that reputation that you exchanged for revenue? No. And I think it's an invitation for all of us to truly, truly believe, and why this podcast exists, is that relationships truly do beat algorithms. But I joke with people, and I know you'll appreciate this. It's along the Warren T lines. My goal isn't that when you show up to my funeral, my bank account balance is on it. My goal is that you don't show up, but you show up to silently support my family and embody the energy and the essence that I brought to this world and continue to spread that love. And I think we all too often forget the fact that our employees, our team, our clients, our customers, they have their own days. They have their own struggles. They have their own challenges. They also have their own goals. And our businesses are, quite frankly, vehicles for us to thrive or survive in this world, but they're not the end state. They're not the end goal, but people are. And I think sometimes we lose perspective. And this was a big reminder and perspective, because I think we live in a time now where we're all so connected and we see enough darkness and damage in the world that if something was to truly happen in this moment, something bad, something catastrophic, the only thing we would have to rely on is relationships. And the only way to foster those is to keep empathy at the forefront. And so I appreciate your perspective, your your embodiment of it, your words, your laughs. Like, you can rant on my podcast all day. I will listen gladly. I'll be your number one hype man in the audience. And so it just was on my heart to share that with everybody, because this conversation landed deeply for me as well. And so, Donald, I would love if you could share with everybody, you know, where to find you. I know you said you're working on a book. Like, where can they come get more of DT? And you have a podcast.
Yeah, I do. So the name of my podcast is High Octane Leadership in an Empathetic World. The first tag is where you find it the easiest, High Octane Leadership. DonaldThompson.com. It will have links to all that. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so please reach out. And I tell people I'm not a lawyer. If I can answer a quick question on LinkedIn, I'm not billing by 15 minutes. And most people are super thoughtful that if it goes past a, you know, quick answer or recommendation or things, then we figure stuff out. So I do lots of just virtual 15-minute cups of coffee with folks, just to get to know folks. But those are the ways that people can get in touch.
Amazing. And everybody, I'll have it all in the show notes. And, you know, you guys know I'm not on LinkedIn because I'm banned for life. You all know the story. But he is. So connect with him there, and maybe at minimum, send him a word of gratitude. Just send him a message and let him know what landed, what he said that shifted your perspective, what gave you a tool or a tip or a nugget to shift something along the lines, and do that feedback loop back and forth, because it's always good when we hear those messages and it's reaffirmed in. But as I always end each one of these episodes, I'm pretty sure if you listen to this, something tickled, right? How I speak instead of asking questions, how I speak first instead of last. Have I created that culture in my team meeting? I've never thought about that perspective. Man, there's a few people I need to clean up a few conversations with. There's some, you know, empathy missing. Whatever that thing was for you, let today be the day that you take action on it, not tomorrow, not next week. Because just like he explained, you lose $1 million deal, you get clarity in this moment. The only way to fix it is to embody it, to work it, and to treat it like Play-Doh. And as long as you keep molding it, the goal is that you keep playing with it, though. That requires action. And so my invitation for everybody is, whatever that thing was for you, take that action today and then earn the right to take the next one, because that's how you'll be able to create this. And so we'll have links to everything. It's donaldthompson.com. We'll have his podcast in, we'll have his LinkedIn in. And my ask is that you reach out and you connect with him. And so, brother, thank you so much for being here.
Me too. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. This has been another episode of the Mind of George Show. Lots of laughs in this one, lots of good ones. And as I always say, you will either see me in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, have a beautiful day and God bless.